Hello, my name is Joyce Harper and I'm Professor at the Institute for Women's Health at University College London, and I'm very proud to introduce to you in this video Module 3 of the Embryology and PGD Academy Distance Learning Certificate in Clinical Embryology. This certificate is made up of 8 modules, and Module 3 is all about genetics, pre-implantation genetic testing and prenatal diagnosis. I think this is really essential information for every embryologist to be fully aware of. But also this module can be taken individually by any healthcare professional, from nurses, genetic counsellors, the medical team, anybody that wants to know about especially pre-implantation genetic testing is welcome to take this as a standalone module, or if you have a BSc in a related topic, you can take the full certificate in clinical embryology. And even if you're not working in an IVF clinic, you can take the certificate without the logbook and even without the exams if you just want to get some information about these topics. So let's look at our module on genetics, pre-implantation genetic testing and prenatal diagnosis. And this is the faculty. I'm going to introduce the module in this video, and then I'm going to talk about genetics, genetic disease, chromosome abnormalities and reproductive genetics. And reproductive genetics spans expanded carrier screening through to pre-implantation genetic testing and prenatal diagnosis. And all of these are going to be covered in this module. Then my dear friend Professor Darren Griffin is going to talk to you about the genetics of infertility. Darren has been working on the cytogenetic side of PGD from the very beginning when he was at University College London, and I started collaborating and working at UCL with Darren in the early 90s, and he really is one of the world's experts on the cytogenetic side of PGT. Then I'm going to talk about the history of PGT. I wrote 2 books on PGT, and in both of those books, the first chapter is on the history. I think it's really nice to think about how all of this started and write it down before we forget. Then I'm going to give you a broad introduction to PGT. So I'm going to talk about the embryo biopsy, the diagnosis, and let this be an introduction for the other experts who are going to give more detailed accounts of these areas. And then it's with great pleasure, my co-founder of the Embryology and PGD Academy, Alpesh Doshi, will be talking about polar body biopsy, cleavage and blastocyst biopsy. And Alpesh is, in my view, one of the world leaders of embryo biopsy. He's been doing this for decades and he's one of the most brilliant embryologists. So it's a great pleasure that he's telling us about embryo biopsy. Then my dear friend Georgia Kakali, who works in Athens in Greece. She is one of the pioneers of blastocyst biopsy. So it's brilliant that she's going to talk to you about the practical aspects of embryo biopsy. And Alpesh Doshi and I have also prepared some very practical videos in Alpesh's clinic, IVF London, where we are showing you the practical aspects of embryo biopsy and also of tubing cells for the diagnosis. We could not have a PGT module without the pioneer, Professor Alan Handyside. It gives me great pleasure that he is going to talk to us about the genetic diagnosis in PGT. And then Roy Naga is someone who we've worked with for many years. He was part of our UCL Centre for PGT, and Roy is going to tell us all about PGT for aneuploidy screening. And then Alan Thornhill, again, I've worked with Alan for many years. He's been one of the pioneers and really had a very interesting career spanning all areas of pre-implantation genetic testing. And Alan's going to give 2 talks. He's going to talk about the future of PGT and also help the embryologists understand what they need to think about when they read the report from the PGD clinic. This has got much more complicated over the years, so it's really important for Alan to explain the interpretation of the PGD report. And Tony Gordon, he has been working in the field of PGT and prenatal diagnosis for many, many years, originally at Blue Gnome, who designed the fabulous microarray that was used for array CGH, then Genesis Genetics, and then now with Cooper Genomics. And Tony's going to talk about non-invasive prenatal testing stroke diagnosis. It's a great pleasure to have Sarah Hillman, who works with me at UCL and University College Hospital. She's a fetal medicine specialist, and she's going to give us a summary of invasive procedures for prenatal diagnosis. So mainly concentrating on amniocentesis and chorionic villus sampling. And then my dear friend Karen Sage, who is one of the world leading experts in genetic counselling, is going to talk to you about genetic counselling for PGT, but also for prenatal diagnosis. And finally, I'm going to bring everything together, discussing the controversies and ethical issues around PGT, and also talk about the future. So the aims and learning objectives of this module are to educate candidates on the basics of genetic disease and the genetics of infertility, to understand the theory and practical aspects of embryo biopsy, to understand how we do genetic testing for PGT, to understand the basics of prenatal diagnosis, and think about what we need to discuss during genetic counselling, and to consider some of the ethical issues around reproductive genetics. Now, there is a logbook for this module for those that are doing the full module. If you're working in an embryology lab and you're doing embryo biopsy, you can complete the logbook with supervision from your supervisor, and it includes biopsy preparation, so preparing the micromanipulator and preparing the tubes for the cells, how we do the embryo biopsy procedure, so you'd have to do some embryo biopsies, and how you need to actually tube some cells, and we'll get that validated. And so this can be completed in your own time over the next year or so. So that's our module 3, all about genetics, reproductive genetics and the future. And if you'd like to register just for this module, please visit www.embryologycertificate.com and you can register just for that module. Or if you want to take the whole certificate, you could do the modules in any order, but to take the full certificate, you do need a Bachelor of Science or equivalent in a related topic. But just to remind you, you don't need to be working in an embryology lab at the moment. You would only need to do that to do the full certificate, which includes the logbooks. And our modules are accredited by the Royal College of Pathologists in the UK, and we will be the process of applying for this has already been done for module 3. So we will have the approval from the Royal College of Pathologists very soon. Thank you very much. Any further information, please email us at ivf.pgd.academy@gmail.com. Thank you very much.